Welcome to Book Buzz Reviews and Summaries. Book, Radical Acceptance, Awakening the Love That Heals Fear and Shame Within Us by Tara Brach. The awakening begins within. There comes a moment in every life when the mirror turns against us. We look at our reflection, not the face we show the world, but the one that hides behind silence. And we whisper, "I'm not enough. Not strong enough. Not lovable enough. Not worthy enough to stand in the sunlight of our own being." That moment is where the story of radical acceptance begins. Tara Brach's message cuts through the noise of modern striving like lightning through fog. You were never meant to be perfect. You were meant to be whole. This book is not a manual for self-improvement. It's a wake-up call. A call to stop waging war against yourself, to end the battle between who you are and who you think you should be. Because the truth is breathtakingly simple. You were never broken. For too long, we've lived under the trance of unworthiness, prisoners of our own judgment, chasing approval, fearing rejection, and mistaking survival for living. But Tara Brach dares us to pause, to breathe, to whisper to our hearts, "What if I am enough, exactly as I am?" From that sacred pause begins the greatest journey a human can take, the journey inward. Through mindfulness and compassion, we awaken from the fog of self-doubt. Through awareness, we reclaim our freedom from fear. Through love, we discover that the very places we thought were unworthy are, in truth, our gateways to grace. This is not a story about escaping pain. It's about transforming it. It's about saying yes to life, even when it hurts. About embracing every fragment of yourself until nothing is left outside the circle of love. Because when you finally stop running from your reflection, you meet the truth that's been waiting all along. You are not the wound. You are the healing. You are not the failure. You are the freedom that rises from it. You are not the storm. You are the sky that holds it all. And once you awaken to that truth, once you touch that boundless love within you, you never look at yourself or the world the same way again. This is radical acceptance. This is the love that heals fear, dissolves shame, and awakens the heart to its own light. This is where your true life begins. Part 1. The Trance of Unworthiness. There are moments, quiet and invisible, when you catch your reflection, not in a mirror, but in the hidden corridors of your own heart. And something deep inside whispers, "Not enough. Not good enough. Not smart enough. Not worthy enough to belong, to be loved, to simply exist as you are." That whisper is the beginning of what Tara Brach calls the trance of unworthiness, a shadow that wraps around the soul and tightens over time, until we mistake it for our identity. Part 1 of Radical Acceptance is an awakening, a stirring call to realize that this trance is not who we are, but rather a story we have unconsciously lived for too long. Chapter 1. The trance takes hold. Brach opens this journey not with accusation, but with compassion. She tells us that the trance of unworthiness is not our personal failure. It's a collective human inheritance. From our earliest years, we are trained to measure ourselves against impossible standards: the good student, the perfect parent, the successful worker, the enlightened seeker. And when we inevitably fall short, shame slithers in. We start living life as if we are on probation, always waiting for that one achievement, that one approval, that one relationship that will finally grant us permission to feel whole. But it never arrives. Through tender storytelling and Buddhist insight, Brach reveals that this trance is a veil, one that blocks us from seeing our true nature, radiant, whole, and utterly lovable. She writes, The most dangerous stories are the ones we don't know we're telling. And indeed, the story of unworthiness is one we repeat endlessly without knowing until we wake up. Chapter 2: The Pain of Separation. To live in the trance is to live separated from others, from the world, and most tragically, from ourselves. Brack guides us into the psychology of this split. Fear and shame, she says, are the twin roots of the trance. Fear keeps us on guard, always anticipating rejection. Shame, meanwhile, chains us to the idea that we are inherently flawed. Together, they create an internal war, a ceaseless effort to hide what we believe to be broken. But here's the paradox. The very act of resisting our pain is what sustains it. The harder we try to fix ourselves, the deeper we confirm the belief that we are broken. Tara introduces us to mindfulness, not as a dry technique, but as a sacred act of remembrance. To be mindful is to turn toward our pain instead of away from it. It is the first movement of love. When we stop struggling against our own imperfection, something miraculous begins to unfold. The frozen parts of the heart start to thaw. Chapter 3: The Sacred Pause. At the heart of radical acceptance lies a simple, revolutionary practice: the sacred pause. Brack invites us to imagine that every moment of self-judgment, every time we whisper, "I'm a failure," or "I'll never be enough," is a bell of awakening. Instead of collapsing into old reactions, we pause. Just pause. In that stillness, we become aware of what is truly happening: the tightening in the chest, the ache of inadequacy, the old wounds whispering their familiar lines. This pause, she explains, is not passive. It is the seed of freedom. Because the moment we bring awareness to our suffering, we have already stepped outside of the trance. The illusion begins to crack. We start to see that we are not the voice of judgment, we are the space that hears it. And in that space, compassion can finally enter. Chapter 4: The Mirror of Compassion. The antidote to the trance of unworthiness is not perfection, it is compassion. But compassion is not a feeling we wait for. It is a muscle we must train. Through gentle yet piercing stories of clients, meditators, and her own life, Brack teaches us that compassion begins with presence. When we allow ourselves to feel the pain we've long denied, we meet ourselves for the first time. There's a story she shares of a woman haunted by lifelong shame. Shame so deep it silenced her joy. Through mindfulness and self-compassion, she learns to hold her suffering like a crying child. In that embrace, the shame dissolves. She realizes what we all must. Nothing needs to be fixed. It only needs to be felt. This realization that we can hold ourselves in love, even while imperfect, is the essence of radical acceptance. The awakening begins. By the end of Part 1, Tara Brach leads us to a profound threshold. We begin to see that the way out of suffering is not to fight against ourselves, but to awaken to who we already are beneath the trance: spacious, compassionate, alive. She writes, "When we stop being at war with ourselves, we begin to live from the truth of our goodness." Part 1 lays the foundation for the transformation ahead. It teaches us that healing is not about earning love. It is about remembering love. It is about awakening the heart that has always been waiting beneath the layers of fear and shame. The journey has only begun, but the veil has lifted. And once you glimpse the light of your own worthiness, even for a moment, you can never again truly return to sleep. Part 2: Awakening from the Trance. The moment of awakening rarely begins with a shout. It begins with a whisper. A soft yet undeniable realization. What if nothing about me needs to be fixed? This question, so simple, yet seismic, begins to dismantle the fortress of unworthiness brick by brick. In Part 2 of Radical Acceptance, Tara Brach becomes both guide and companion on this inward pilgrimage, showing us how to awaken from the trance not through striving, but through presence, self-compassion, and the radiant courage to see ourselves as we truly are. Chapter 5. Seeing Clearly. To awaken, we must first see, not through the distorted lens of judgment, but through the gentle gaze of awareness. Brach explains that when we live in the trance, we are like dreamers lost in our own stories. Stories shaped by fear, guilt, and relentless self-criticism. Our thoughts become dictators, commanding us to do more, be more, achieve more, all to earn a peace that never comes. But awakening begins when we realize thoughts are not reality. They are clouds drifting across the vast sky of consciousness. Beneath them lies something timeless, an awareness that is pure, steady, and untouched by our inner storms. Tara urges us to practice this seeing in meditation and in life. When a painful thought arises, "I'm not lovable, I failed again, I'm too broken," we do not fight it or feed it. We simply say, "Ah, this is the voice of unworthiness." And then gently we return to presence, to the breath, to the body, to this sacred now. This act of witnessing, clear, compassionate, non-judging, is the first awakening. Chapter 6. The Power of Yes. Every spiritual tradition speaks of surrender, the art of saying yes to life. But Brach gives this surrender a new language, one rooted not in passivity but in love. When we say yes, she explains, we stop resisting our own humanity. We open our hearts to everything that arises, joy and sorrow, fear and peace, beauty and loss. The practice of radical acceptance is this living yes. She tells a story of a man who came to her retreat, consumed by anger over a painful divorce. For years, he had armored himself against his emotions, believing that to feel was to lose control. But one evening, as he sat in meditation, he whispered to his pain, "Yes, this too." And something within him softened. The walls fell. He cried, not in despair, but in release, as if returning to the river of life he had long abandoned. To say yes does not mean to approve of pain or injustice. It means to stop denying our reality. Only when we allow what is, can we begin to transform it. Chapter 7. The Wings of Acceptance, Recognizing and Allowing. Tara beautifully distills the process of radical acceptance into two wings, the wing of recognition and the wing of allowing. Recognition is mindfulness, seeing clearly what is present within us. Allowing is compassion, letting it be there without resistance. She describes a moment from her own life, rushing to meet a deadline, her chest tight with anxiety, her mind spiraling into self-blame. In that moment, she paused and whispered, "It's okay, sweetheart. This too belongs." Instantly, her heart softened. The storm was still there, but the sky had opened. That, Brach says, is the miracle of radical acceptance. When we stop fighting our pain, we stop being defined by it. The waves keep rolling, but we discover the ocean, vast, steady, and whole. Through these two wings, the wounded self begins to take flight. Chapter 8. Rain, the Pathway to Freedom. Here, Brach introduces one of her most beloved teachings, the rain practice, an elegant four-step process for bringing mindfulness and compassion to any difficult emotion. R. Recognize what's happening. A. Allow the experience to be there, just as it is. I. Investigate with gentle curiosity. N. Nurture yourself with love and understanding. She illustrates this with the story of a woman haunted by a lifetime of self-loathing. Whenever she made a mistake, she would spiral into despair. Through Rain, she began to pause and recognize her shame instead of drowning in it. She allowed herself to feel it fully, the ache in her chest, the weight behind her eyes. Then she investigated. What does this part of me need? The answer came softly, to know I'm loved. And so she nurtured herself, hand over heart, whispering words of kindness she had never heard as a child. Over time, her inner dialogue transformed. The voice of self-hatred grew faint, replaced by a compassionate presence that no longer needed fixing, only tending. Rain is not just a practice, it is a doorway, a way to meet the hurting self and gently guide it back home. Chapter 9. Loving What We Discover. Awakening from the trance is not the end of pain, but the beginning of intimacy with life itself. Brack reminds us that the goal is not to escape our humanness, but to embrace it so fully that it becomes sacred. Every flaw, every fear, every sorrow, all are threads in the great tapestry of being. When seen with the eyes of compassion, even our wounds shimmer with grace. She writes, "The boundary to what we can accept is the boundary to our freedom." And so, as we expand our capacity to love what we discover, not in spite of our imperfections, but through them, we begin to live from our true nature, awake, loving, and free. The light of awareness. By the end of Part 2, something has shifted within us. The trance that once held us captive begins to loosen. We taste, perhaps for the first time, the quiet sweetness of simply being. Not performing, not improving, not becoming, but being. We start to live more deliberately, more open-heartedly. We catch ourselves when we slip into self-judgment and return again and again to awareness, to love. In this awakening, Tara Brach reminds us, there is no final destination, only the eternal unfolding of presence. We are learning at last to trust the truth, that underneath every wound lies wisdom, and beneath every act of fear, there is a longing for love. Part 3. The freedom of a fully awakened heart. There comes a moment, after the long labor of awakening, when the heart remembers its song. Not the song of striving or survival, but the melody of belonging, clear, tender, and free. In the final part of Radical Acceptance, Tara Brach leads us into the radiant culmination of the journey, the freedom that arises when we live fully awake, fully alive, and fully in love with life as it is. This is not a tale of escape from pain. It is the story of transformation through it. It is the story of learning to inhabit our own hearts as sacred ground. Chapter 10. Embracing our humanity. Freedom begins not in transcendence, but in tenderness. Brach reminds us that awakening does not mean becoming perfect or floating above our struggles. It means embracing the whole of our humanity, our fear, our grief, our joy, our longing, with the same love a mother gives her child. She tells the story of a man who, after years of meditation, found himself still erupting in anger toward his teenage son. Shamed and disheartened, he turned to Brach and said, "I thought by now I'd be beyond this." Tara smiled gently and said, "You're not supposed to be beyond it. You're supposed to be with it." That is the essence of radical acceptance. To awaken is to stop dividing our experience into what is spiritual and what is unworthy. To awaken is to bring love into every corner of our being, even and especially the messy, human parts we wish to hide. In doing so, we discover something astonishing. The very places we once feared to enter become the portals to grace. Chapter 11. The Dance of Relationship. No awakening is complete in isolation. Freedom, Brach insists, is not a solitary achievement. It is a relational art. When we are lost in the trance of unworthiness, relationships mirror our pain. We seek validation, fear rejection, and armor our hearts against vulnerability. But when we awaken, even slightly, relationships become mirrors of truth, compassion, and shared humanity. Brack speaks of seeing the secret beauty in others, a practice that transforms the ordinary into the sacred. When we look beyond another's defenses and see their yearning, their fear, their innate goodness, we begin to love without agenda. She recounts a story from a retreat, a woman struggling with her mother's constant criticism. Through mindful presence, the daughter began to see not just the harshness, but the deep insecurity and loneliness beneath her mother's words. Her anger softened into compassion. The relationship did not become perfect, but it became real. That is the power of radical acceptance. It turns relationships from battlegrounds into fields of awakening. Love ceases to be a transaction. It becomes a way of seeing. Chapter 12, Living from the Awakened Heart. In this final movement, Tara invites us to live from the awakened heart, to make awareness and compassion our natural home. When we are awake, life no longer feels like something to manage or control. It becomes something to meet, moment by moment, breath by breath. We learn to trust the intelligence of life, even when it brings pain. Brock offers practices for daily living, pausing before reacting, softening into the body, remembering the breath as an anchor to the present. But beyond technique, she points toward a sacred stance, a deep trust in our own belonging. She writes, "When we rest in awareness, we rest in love." To live from the awakened heart is to know that love is not something we earn. It is what we are. It is the current beneath every moment, carrying us back home no matter how far we drift. Chapter 13, The Boundless Heart, Loving the World. The final chapter expands the circle outward, from the self to others to all beings. As our hearts awaken, compassion naturally ripples into the world. We begin to see that the suffering of others is not separate from our own. Brock calls this the widening gyre of love, the natural expansion of consciousness that moves from me to we, from mine to ours. Through moving stories of activists, caregivers, and ordinary people living with extraordinary compassion, she reminds us that radical acceptance is not withdrawal from the world, but radical engagement with it. When we meet the world with awareness and love, whether through small acts of kindness or great acts of courage, we participate in the healing of the collective trance. To awaken individually is to contribute to the awakening of all, the deep freedom. By the end of this journey, Tara Brach leaves us with a truth so simple, it feels like returning home after a lifetime of exile. Freedom is not found in becoming someone new. It is found in being fully who we already are. When we finally stop running from ourselves, the war ends. When we turn toward the ache in our chest, it becomes a doorway. When we hold our pain with compassion, it transforms into wisdom. This is the great paradox of radical acceptance. When we embrace all that we are, we discover we were never broken to begin with. Brack writes, "The spiritual path is not about getting somewhere else. It's about being where we are and realizing that this too is sacred." The invitation. And so, dear reader, or perhaps, dear traveler, the invitation is clear. To pause, to breathe, to place a gentle hand over your heart, to whisper to yourself, "I accept you exactly as you are." In that simple act, you awaken the love that has always been waiting within you. The love that heals fear, dissolves shame, and reminds you, you were never unworthy of love. You were love itself, merely asleep. And when that love awakens, the whole world becomes a little brighter, because one more heart has remembered the truth. 3 takeaways from the book. Takeaway 1. Stop fighting yourself. You were never broken to begin with. The greatest illusion of our lives is the belief that something is wrong with us. We spend years, even decades, trying to earn worthiness through success, approval, perfection. But Tara Brach shatters this myth with clarity and compassion. Freedom doesn't come from fixing yourself. It comes from befriending yourself. Every time you pause and meet your pain with tenderness instead of judgment, you weaken the trance of unworthiness. You are not your failures. You are not your fears. You are the awareness behind them, spacious, radiant, and whole. So stop trying to become enough. You already are. When you dare to rest in that truth, when you whisper to your heart, "It's okay, sweetheart, you belong," healing begins. And in that moment, you stop surviving life and start living it. Takeaway 2. Say yes to life, even when it hurts. Radical acceptance is not passive. It's not about giving up. It's about waking up. When you say yes to your experience, to fear, grief, anger, or joy, you step out of resistance and into reality. You stop fighting what is and start dancing with it. Life doesn't demand perfection. It asks for presence. Every time you soften instead of struggle, you reclaim your power. Tara's message is bold. The pain you run from contains the freedom you seek. When you face your fear with awareness and compassion, the wound becomes a teacher, the darkness becomes a doorway, and the struggle becomes sacred. Saying yes to life is how you meet yourself, fully, fiercely, and free. Takeaway 3. Lead with love. It's the only freedom that lasts. The ultimate awakening is not about enlightenment on a mountaintop. It's about how you love yourself, others, and the world. When you stop rejecting your humanity, your heart expands. You begin to see others not as enemies or obstacles, but as fellow travelers carrying their own invisible pain. Compassion becomes your natural language. Radical acceptance teaches that the more you love yourself, the more capable you become of healing the world. Because a heart that is free from shame becomes a light, a force of peace in a weary world. And that is the destiny Tara Brach points us toward. A life not ruled by fear, but guided by love. A heart no longer divided, but whole. A soul that finally remembers, this, right here, is enough. Thanks for listening to Book Buzz Reviews and Summaries.